All of us, myself included, we always, in some innate way, do seek for approval in some ways, but I realized that I did not need to wait for conditions and things to be perfect for me to do things I wanted to do. I did not need to wait for what societal deems as the right age to start building businesses. Oftentimes, the most overlooked and underserved markets have the biggest problems to solve for. So for me, early on, what allowed me to actually take the first step was having a very strong conviction that this problem of solving for mental health care access is not an if it will happen, but when it will happen. Every space is always going to be a set of customers that need something to be solved for. Hi, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Intellect. We are a mental health care startup founded in Singapore, today serving millions of lives globally. I'm born and raised in Singapore, so I went through this very efficient and effective education system. With that also comes a lot of pressure for kids. During my earlier teenage years, I actually struggled quite a bit with anxiety and then had my first panic attack when I was 16. That's when I really experienced the gaps or the reality of mental health care. This is something that requires a bit more than just me Googling for answers. I should speak to somebody, right? So I count myself lucky. My parents were open-minded, let me see a psychologist. In that first therapy session that I had, it was a very cathartic experience because I realized firstly how helpful therapy and counseling is and was. So to me, growing up in Asia, and for those that are from Asia can resonate at this point, there's a lot of stigma around the subject of mental health, right? We might even previously perceive mental health issues as being crazy. So for me, the first stepping point was realizing how misunderstood mental health support was. And secondly, from the years post that, I realized that a lot of times when I speak with friends, peers, you read in the news, all the issues that I faced were so commonplace out there. And yet, oftentimes people don't know where to seek help, particularly in Asia where we begin our journey. So for us, it was how do we rewrite the script? How do we rewrite the narrative that seeking help and support for your well-being is not a scary thing? But for me, quite quickly early on, I realized that I did not only need to stick towards this path of being a great student, get a good job, and so on and so forth. I realized quite early on I cared about building things. Eventually, at some point, break into a less conventional path, decided to leave high school, started working on things that I cared about. So my earliest stints starting in entrepreneurship began in my teenage years when I was in secondary school. So I started online blog shops, different types of drop shipping businesses. The short of it, most of them didn't work out. But I learned a lot from these experiences. I could simply do things. I could just build things. All of us, myself included, we always, in some innate way, do seek, to please for approval in some ways. But where I think it really made a difference for me early on, it's not that I didn't care entirely about people's opinions. Of course, to a certain degree, I do care. But I realized that I did not need to wait for conditions and things to be perfect for me to do things I wanted to do. I did not need to wait for what societal deems as the right age to start building businesses. With technology, and today with AI at our fingertips, I could reach different people across the world. From my own bedroom to my own laptop or my mobile phone, I could actually build something that reach a lot of people. So pretty early on, I realized actually, hey, the technology out there, the internet, is actually things that I could really leverage on. And I believe strongly in building things that I care about. So marrying both those things together allowed me to do a lot more. You can just do things as a young individual, and we see a lot of that today as well. Finding customers, particularly B2B, is always one of the big things that many early-stage founders, crack their heads around. How do we start selling to people? Where do we get started? Maybe a motivating thing for folks are trying to do and crack into B2B. The reality is that you do not need particularly a certain set of skills or experience or credibility to really be successful at B2B. The reason why I say this is because when we began our journey selling to B2B for mental health care, I had never done B2B sales, I had never been in healthcare, and we had never really sold to large companies for that matter. So all of this was very new terrain and grounds for us, but we did it anyway. So there is strength in being not from industry, right? It gives you a more open-minded view that very, very tenured, experienced experts may not be able to see because they've seen it one way for a long time. But for those trying to crack B2B, the main tips that I have is really start smaller, find specific use cases, do pilots. Today we serve hundreds of Fortune 500 multinational companies, but we didn't start there. It all starts from breaking it down into smaller steps, right? We begin with more targeted use cases, more targeted client segments. These were startups, these were smaller companies that really resonated with what we're trying to do and were more open-minded to get started with this. From there, we brought on the first customers. I think for many of the aspiring B2B founders and sales folks out there, naturally the goal is to get towards a big million enterprise customer. For now, if you can, fantastic. But oftentimes, trying to get a big mega contract on day one, it will be a very tough thing to actually do. You need to build credibility and trust, right? So the two key things is in to build momentum and in to build trust. So fixate on those two things at the start. I would worry less about getting, the largest accounts, the largest deals, the biggest logos. Once you achieve momentum and trust, that's when things start picking up. So when we began Intellect 6+ years back, when I started to have the idea around starting something around mental health care, the world was a quite different place. It was pre-pandemic. Mental was still not a front and center subject. People did not really understand why choose a space that not a lot of people were buying into, especially in Asia. When we pitched to people, spoke to people, a lot more of the business-minded individuals were hesitant to buy in from the outset. So actually, we spent months before even building anything, speaking with people out there, experts, psychologists, HR leaders, insurers, just individuals, students, anyone out there basically, to form a clear understanding, or as clear as we could gather, of how people perceive mental health and what the problem statements to be solved was. So first and foremost, start with the problem in mind. AI is now all the rage, so people are going out building AI this, AI that. But is there a customer that actually requires this? Is there a pain point that you're solving for? So for me, early on, what allowed me to actually take the first step was having a very strong conviction that this problem of solving for mental health care access is not an if it will happen, but when it will happen. So being a very, very poor, lean startup in the early days of literally myself and my co-founder, we didn't have a lot of resources, which meant that we needed to be very, very clear in what we were focused on and where we could start building a wedge from. The reality is that there are many solutions tackling mental health in different ways. We wanted to find a way that could help us get started. And for us, is to provide a scalable, low-touch solution to begin with. So our first iteration was actually just clinically led self-guided programs through an app that allowed people to get support for low-level needs. Nothing clinical, nothing severe, but something that was lightweight, easy to scale, and to reach many people. So that's what actually got us going. From that point, we already had a bigger vision to build a full stack of care, from preventative care towards subclinical, clinical, and even more downstream acute crisis care as well. That was starting a very scalable, lightweight solution was a good place to start. In any situation, we can view things from a disadvantageous point of view or an advantageous point of view. For me and how I view companies and founders coming from Asia, very importantly, it's that we have a very unique dynamic in Asia whereby there's so many different countries, all different cultures and languages and environments as well. Asia is probably one of the most complex, diverse regions. So if you solve for Asia, it's really, really much easier to go beyond that, right? Because from a localization point of view, from a coverage point of view, other regions, not that they don't have complexities, they do, they would be as difficult, if not less difficult, than localizing it for the region. So I think in that regard, starting from Asia gave us a very, very international mindset to begin with from day one. We will always think about how can we scale and build systems that could translate into global playbooks from there. The thing that needs to shift is that mindset. Right? I think a lot of founders do think that the biggest companies are from the US. Stats do show it, but there's also an increasing number of companies from Asia that are becoming global successes, both B2C and B2B, and I think that's something that is quite meaningful. And what we envision is that mental health will be front and center and it's already quickly getting there as physical health, and that people will not be afraid to actually get that support. In the same way that you go to the gym, you get a salad, and Intellect's role is to really build a whole ecosystem of care that can be tailored and catered to any level of risk and need that one may have, no matter what language, what issue, and what background you're from. You'll be able to receive care that's relevant and personal to you. So my advice and experience for founders that are starting a business in something that's less exciting, less scalable, is that despite what people may say, it may not be as bad an idea as you think, given the sense that oftentimes the most overlooked and underserved markets have the biggest problems to solve for. It may not be the sexiest, it may not be the most enticing, but in every space, there's always going to be a set of customers that need something to be solved for. And in most cases, startups begin not scalable, right? Figure something out, a problem statement, customer segment, and a way to solve for that. Figure out how to scale from there will come along the way as you grow from there. The most important thing is to try to find the right problem and customers to solve this for. And technology can make things either more efficient, more convenient, or even better as a whole. As a tech company, naturally we believe a lot in the advent and coming in of AI, and we do a lot of work in AI as well. Where we believe strongly is that human being in the loop is really critical for mental health care. The reality is that there's a shortage of clinicians in the world, the goal that we have is to use AI to make this a much more addressed issue. AI can help a lot more of the low-level issues, like the risk cases, to allow human clinicians to work on high-risk cases. So AI will complement the clinicians, they'll complement the humans, and in many cases, it will be a hybrid of human and AI-led care in varying situations. For me, the real outcome and output we're trying to drive is not just build a company, but really try to build a systemic change in how mental health care is addressed. But we believe the work is only just getting started. So for us, it's still a long journey ahead. We have a lot of the right ingredients. We believe we're set up to really execute well on this vision, and we're excited about what's to come. If I were to meet my 16-year-old self, I would probably tell him the worries and doubts you have, they're fair, everyone has them, but trust the process, trust the journey. Putting the work will be what will get you there. Everyone has doubts, everyone, doesn't believe in themselves in some ways, but just keep pushing through and having that inner true belief that working towards something will help you get there, and that'll be a key thing.